The parentified son believes his role is to keep everyone around him happy, an idea deeply ingrained in him since he was a young boy. Growing up, he learned early on that his value was tied to his ability to take care of others, to soothe, and to bring calm to the chaos around him. He became the peacemaker, the caregiver, the one who always seemed to know what to do and say to keep the family in harmony. Outwardly, he projects an image of calm competence, someone always willing to lend a hand and shoulder the weight of others' burdens. But inside, he's drowning in self-doubt, questioning his worth and purpose, wondering if he will ever meet someone who values him for who he truly is, rather than what he can offer. The desire to be seen, to be appreciated as a person and not a caretaker, is something he often pushes aside, unable to admit how much he longs for it. As a child, he was known as the little man of the house. He wasn't allowed to simply be a child. He was given responsibilities far beyond his years, thrust into a role he didn't choose but felt obligated to fulfill. His mother, dealing with her own struggles, leaned on him as if he were an adult, confiding in him, looking to him for comfort. He learned to hide his own emotions, his fears, sadness, and even joy, because he didn't want to add to her burdens. She depended on him, and he, feeling an instinctual loyalty and love for her, did everything he could to be her emotional anchor. The cost was his own childhood, his ability to freely express his feelings, and eventually his understanding of himself. He remembers those early years vividly. As other children played and laughed without a care, he was watching over his siblings, managing the family's emotions, trying to ease tensions, and making sure everyone was okay. He became hyper-aware of everyone else's moods, learning to predict what might set off an argument or a crisis, doing his best to shield the family from anything that might tip the delicate balance. It was a job he took seriously, yet he was never quite able to shake the feeling that he was only good for what he could provide, that his worth was directly tied to his usefulness to others. These experiences left him with a deeply ingrained belief: he can only be valued by working and providing for others. This belief has followed him into adulthood, shaping his choices and his relationships. He has become a workaholic, dedicating himself to his job, pushing himself beyond his limits. To him, work feels like a place where he can be of service, where he can prove his worth, where he is once again providing something valuable. But this relentless drive also serves as a coping mechanism, a way to distract himself from the deep-seated anxiety and unresolved pain he carries. He tells himself he's simply ambitious, that his career is fulfilling, but he knows that much of his motivation stems from a need to escape, to avoid the emptiness that creeps in during moments of stillness. This constant need to stay busy has its consequences. He's often exhausted, burned out, and in desperate need of a break. Yet the thought of slowing down terrifies him. Relaxing for him feels unnatural, even wrong. He's been taught, directly and indirectly, that rest is indulgent, that time spent on himself is time wasted. Guilt gnaws at him whenever he considers doing something just for himself. He fears that without his role as the provider, as the problem solver, he might not be worth much at all. And so he keeps going, pushing through the burnout, convincing himself that this is just what life is supposed to be, a series of responsibilities and obligations with little room for personal fulfillment. In trying to meet everyone's expectations, he's become a version of himself molded to earn approval, particularly from his father. Growing up, he sought his father's praise, trying to become the man he thought his father wanted him to be. He adopted the values his father respected: hard work, sacrifice, loyalty, believing that this was the only way to gain his father's approval. But in doing so, he lost touch with his own desires, his own dreams. His sense of self has become so entangled with his family's needs and expectations that he struggles to identify who he truly is beneath it all. He wonders if there's anything left of the person he was meant to be, the person he might have become had he been free to follow his own path. Now, at 40, he finds himself at a point of reckoning. He wakes up each morning feeling like he's living someone else's life, one constructed out of duty rather than choice. There's an emptiness within him, a quiet yet persistent ache that he can't quite understand. He has everything he thought he was supposed to want: a stable job, a family he cares for, the approval of those around him. Yet he feels hollow, as though something crucial is missing. He questions how he ended up here, why he feels so disconnected from his life, and whether it's too late to change. Deep down, he knows he needs something more, something that goes beyond his role as a caretaker. But this realization brings with it a profound sense of guilt. The idea of pursuing his own interests, of setting boundaries, feels almost like a betrayal to his family, to the identity he's carried for so long. He has been conditioned to believe that his needs are secondary, that his purpose is to be there for others, not to indulge in self-discovery. This internal conflict leaves him feeling trapped, yearning for freedom, yet paralyzed by the fear of stepping outside the role he has played for so long. The parentified son has always believed it's his duty to take care of every member of his family. He was never shown that boundaries are not only acceptable, but necessary. No one taught him that his worth isn't tied to how much he can do for others, that he doesn't need to solve everyone's problems to be valuable. As a result, he has spent his life taking on the burdens of those around him, often at the expense of his own well-being. He has absorbed their stress, their struggles, carrying them as though they were his own, without ever questioning whether this was fair or sustainable. Yet, as he stands at this crossroads, he realizes that he cannot continue like this indefinitely. He is beginning to understand that in order to live a fulfilling life, he must learn to let go of the past, to release the weight of these expectations. It's a daunting task, one that requires him to question beliefs that have shaped him for decades. But he knows that if he doesn't make a change, he will continue to feel disconnected, unfulfilled, and trapped. This journey of self-discovery, of breaking free from the chains of his past, is not easy. It requires him to confront painful truths, to acknowledge the ways in which he has been shaped by his upbringing. It demands that he learn to set boundaries, to say no without feeling guilty, and to recognize that he, too, has needs that deserve attention. He must begin to trust that his worth is not solely determined by what he can offer others, that he has value simply as he is. He dreams of a life where he can pursue his own interests without guilt, where he can experience relationships that are mutually supportive rather than one-sided. He longs to feel free, to live without the constant pressure to prove his worth. For perhaps the first time, he is beginning to imagine a future where he doesn't have to be strong every moment, where he can allow himself to be vulnerable, to be cared for, to simply exist without the weight of responsibility.